Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chase's Theater. This month, I'll be counting down my picks for the top 10 best animated movies of all time. I'm going to give you a warning right now. Pixar is dominating my list. If you don't like Pixar, you're probably not going to like my list. But who doesn't like Pixar? I mean, come on. But yeah, I tried to not just have it be all Pixar movies, but when it came down to it, the best animated movies are Pixar movies for the most part. So I didn't want to not include it just because it was a Pixar movie. So I didn't want to not include a movie just because it was a Pixar movie, and I didn't want them to be overloaded on my list. So yeah, that should tell you guys that I really think that these movies are the best animated movies ever made. And I will also say they're all pretty modern movies. I think that the peak period of animation has been within the last 15 to 20 years. Like, there are great animated movies throughout the last century, but I don't think they really reached peak greatness until the modern era. So that's just my opinion. You guys can totally sound off in the comments below on when you think the peak period for animation is, or what your top 10 animated movies are. I'd love to hear from you guys too. One more thing before I get started. I decided to not include any anime movies on this list. I'm going to have a separate list for my top 10 anime movies, and that'll come out next month. Here we go. Here are my top 10 best animated movies of all time. At number 10, we have Wes Anderson's first trip into animation was stylistically bold. Along with all of his other movies, it has a distinct color palette, this time featuring fall colors like oranges and browns and golds. It's hilarious, has a fantastic story arc for these stop-motion animated characters, but the voice casting and the witty script is really what makes this movie work. George Clooney, Meryl Streep, Jason Schwartzman, and Bill Murray fill the title roles, and they have loads of fun doing it. This is a movie appropriate for kids, but I think adults will get a lot more enjoyment out of it. There's a lot of adult jokes littered throughout, but it's still a family-friendly movie. You can have a great time watching it as a family and laugh all the way through it. Usually the third movie in a trilogy is a stinker, but Pixar threw this old trope out the window in their third installment in the Toy Story series. It was an interesting yet creative story choice to set this story so many years after the first two. It paid off well because those of us who watched the first two growing up as kids had grown up in the years between these two sequels coming out. So Andy was still easily relatable. It set up a much different narrative and obstacles for our favorite toy characters to go through. It's funny and possibly the most emotional entry in the series, which is saying a lot, but it also shows leaps and bounds on how far they've come in the animation game over the years. Who could have pulled off a movie about an old man flying to South America with a Boy Scout in his house powered by balloons? Nobody but Pixar could have pulled this off. I remember when I first heard of this movie, I had no idea what to make of it. There was no trailer at the time, and it just seemed like such an odd, new story to tell. What we got was a great adventure story with creative characters and environments. And who could forget that tearjerker of an opening sequence? WALL-E is a sci-fi masterpiece. Somehow Pixar was able to make a movie with no dialogue for like the first 30 minutes of the movie, and the audience, even kids, were able to completely understand and completely connect to the main character. This movie was almost a little ahead of its time, too. It touched on certain social and environmental issues, such as what the Earth will look like in many years if we keep treating it the way we do, the dangers of rampant consumerism, and that through the advancements in technology, humans are acting more like robots, while robots are becoming more human-like. This is a kids' movie with heavy topics like this, has wonderful characters, and even a love story wrapped up in it. And it's only like an hour and a half. This one will always be a fun one to watch for everyone of all ages, but it will also be very socially important for years to come. Every time I think of Shrek, automatically All-Star by Smash Mouth starts playing in my head. Shrek is now an iconic piece of our pop culture because of how bold and how creative this movie was for the time. It took a totally modern spin on old fairy tales, and it worked so well. It's hilarious. It's maybe the funniest animated movie we've ever seen. and it gave us many quotable lines from the voice cast of Michael Myers, Eddie Murphy, and Cameron Diaz. It has an awesome soundtrack that totally sets the mood for this meta masterpiece, and has one of the best love stories in an animated feature. This movie does an excellent job of paying respect to its classic fairy tale origins while giving audiences a modern twist on them. It'll be a many long years before Shrek ever goes out of style. I remember seeing Finding Nemo as a kid in the movie theater and just being blown away. Just the scope of the ocean is so beautifully animated throughout this whole movie. It features many unforgettable sea creature characters, and it instantly became a piece of our culture. I still hear people quoting this movie, and it came out over 15 years ago. Pixar gave us such a heartwarming tale about a dad searching for his missing son and learning along the way that he needs to let go a little bit in order for his son to be able to grow up on his own. What if the monsters hiding in your closet all lived in their own separate realm and used kids' screams to power their cities? This is one of the most creative movies of all time. And it was one of the first I saw in the movie theater as a kid, and I just remember being whisked away into this magical world that Pixar created for us. Voice cast is on point yet again for Pixar. The odd relationship between Sully and Mike and Boo is funny and it's always entertaining, and Randall is possibly one of Pixar's best villains they've ever created. It's a great, entertaining movie for everyone of all ages, but for adults it touches on themes such as prejudice and how corporations can even start these stereotypes for their own greedy purposes. While it doesn't quite live up to the original, it's about as close as you can get. Unlike many sequels, it doesn't tread over the same themes and storylines as the original, and instead this one features a completely new adventure for our characters to go on. It's funny, adds awesome new characters, and it's full of heart. Who can remain dry-eyed during Jesse's flashback music montage? What if toys came alive while their owners were away? What a concept, and one that every kid thinks about. This movie was groundbreaking in the sense that it was the first full-length movie to be 100% CGI animated. I read somewhere that it took like 4 hours to render every single frame of Toy Story. That's insane. It takes like a fraction of that today. This movie was a trailblazer for CGI animation for years to come. The fact that it was able to pull off all these technically difficult feats makes the writing and the characters all that more impressive. They're toys, and yet kids and even adults were able to relate to them because of how well they were written and portrayed in the movie. I mean, come on, who doesn't know Woody or Buzz Lightyear? They've become iconic pieces of our pop culture. Left in the hands of a lesser studio, the most important aspects of the movie, which really give it the heart, could have been swept under the rug in place of putting all their efforts into just creating this technically beautiful animation. Toy Story is a timeless classic that will endure for years to come. I don't think it'll ever not connect to its audience. I really have no flaws with it at all. I think Toy Story is 100% a perfect movie, and I think it's maybe Pixar's funniest and most relatable too, which is saying a lot. Did I just say that Toy Story was Pixar's most relatable film? Gotta take that back and give it to The Incredibles. The Incredibles came out in the early stages of what we now know as the modern superhero movie age, and yet it's better than most of them that even came out after it. The key to what makes this movie great, and what makes so many people connect to it, is the real characters and the real situations the movie portrays. The movie is about a family of superheroes, and yet the audience connects with them so easily. And this is because these characters are put through these very relatable circumstances, with Mr. Incredible trying to relive his glory days, with Mrs. Incredible trying to keep everyone in her family happy and try to just keep herself alive. The superpowers for each family member are just so perfectly picked. With Mr. Incredible, he's got to be strong for his whole family. With Mrs. Incredible, she's always stretching around to, got to pick up the kids here, got to make dinner there. With Violet, she feels like she wants to disappear. She's kind of like an emo girl. With Dash, he's always running around, because what young boy do you know that isn't super hyper all the time? And Jack Jack has unpredictable powers, because you never know exactly what to expect when you're raising a baby. The supervillain is one of the best villains we've ever seen in any superhero movie ever. We totally feel for him. He's believable, he's cool, and yet vulnerable due to his overconfidence. And he wouldn't have worked if it weren't due to the awesome first 10 minutes of this movie that just sets up the world we're about to enter so well. We quickly learn how the world used to operate with superheroes and what made that change. Without that opening sequence showing Mr. Incredible in his prime, the audience wouldn't have been able to connect with him half as much as they did. The world building is truly remarkable in this movie, and the director Brad Bird deserves credit for that. There's beautiful cinematography, there's great animated action sequences, and a truly amazing original story. Also, the music is amazing. It is inspired by the classic James Bond themes. It did such a great job evoking the emotions of the scenes it was placed into. It was bombastic during the action scenes. It was slow and touching during the more emotional scenes. It just had everything. And it's iconic, too. When you hear the theme, you know it's The Incredibles. But what elevates this movie so much is how relatable it is, and how uplifting the message is. It's about family and how you may not always get along, but you can work together to get through rough patches. The Incredibles will make you think about life and about family. It will entertain you with spectacle and great storyline and action sequences, but most importantly, it'll touch your heart. Well guys, thanks for checking out my list for the top 10 best animated movies of all time. I'd love to hear what your guys' are. Please sound off in the comments below. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you for my next review.